Cloud. Perfect. Before we get started today, I wanted to give many thanks to Supporting Strategies for really becoming one of our first Northern Virginia partners, for sponsoring and supporting this event, as well as a in-person happy hour that we are hosting next week. So Josh, would you like to say a little hello?
Yes. Hey, thanks, Tasha. Well, thanks for the opportunity for the sponsorship and kind of messaging me and getting me involved as a cybersecurity association. So just to introduce myself, I'm the Director of Business Development for Supporting Strategies, Northern Virginia. We specialize in bookkeeping, controller level accounting, financial reporting, and operational support services. Yeah, but we look forward to kind of sponsoring this event. We were hoping we were going to be in person, but we will be in February. So look forward to meeting you, a lot of you guys in February. And then, yeah, and then kind of supporting the Cybersecurity Association in the future and supporting more events.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so a little just overview of who we are, just to make sure we can level set. Cybersecurity Association is leading the advancement of cyber through advocacy and collaboration. This is an activity out of our Center for Business Growth and Innovation. We also have a Center for Cyber Talent, which we'll hear a little bit about today as well, and also Cyber Resilience, which is where we do all of our cyber education and outreach and all of our programming for cyber professionals as well as non-cyber professionals. Our purpose is to grow and serve the ecosystem through advocacy, education, and building community. And we are a trusted community for companies and organizations that really are looking for actionable resources and to connect with their peers. And I do not want to dive any deeper into the financial groups time. So we're going to jump right in. When we were putting this together, we said, we thought it was really important to start with finances, because if you don't understand your finances, you don't understand your business. And it's really hard to make wise talent management and marketing and sales choices if we don't have that basic understanding. So thrilled to welcome to the stage, virtual stage, Brian and Meredith. Brian, if you would like to introduce yourself first, since I see you first.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Nichols. I am a tax partner with Gross Mendelson and Associates in Fairfax, Virginia. Specialize with tax planning, tax consulting for small to medium-sized businesses and individuals. Happy to be here.
Thank you. All right, and Meredith, you are our second speaker.
Yes. Good afternoon. And I think it's just coincidence that our last names are so similar. But mine is Nicholas, not Nichols. So I'm Meredith Nicholas with the CFO Solution. I am located in Northern Virginia. We offer fractional CFO services to small businesses looking to make more informed, data-driven decisions in their everyday business, anywhere from bookkeeping all the way up to that CFO level. We do help, but I don't do taxes, so that's why you need Brian.
Excellent. Excellent. So we will get started right off with a really big one. Brian, what are the most significant tax changes that executives need to be aware of in this current business environment? And we know that this can change literally by the second.
Yeah, this is kind of a loaded question because it most definitely is going to change here in the next coming year. So I'll start off with, on the books right now is the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. Lots of those provisions were set to expire at the end of 2025. That tax law was kind of monumental in Trump's first term, and so now that he has come to power again, we are hearing that those things that were set to expire are most likely going to be made permanent. And And some of them, might even be adjusted a bit. For business owners, some of the things that are probably closest and near and dear to the business owners would probably be the Section 199A qualified business income deduction, which effectively is if you are a pass-through entity owner, partnership or S corp, you essentially get a 20% deduction on the income from your pass-through entity. You know, we're hearing that that's probably going to be made permanent, which is great for pass-through business owners. Another thing that is near and dear to business owners is bonus depreciation. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act put bonus depreciation at 100%, but there was a phase out. So this year in 2025, bonus depreciation is set to be 40%, which is the lowest it's been in a long time. We're hearing that that's going to be put back up to 100%. We don't know how long they're going to do that for, but that's probably another thing that's going to be extended. There is talk about reinstituting the research and development credit, which also changed recently. So that's another one probably in the tech space that's pretty significant. The change was that research and development costs now have to be amortized, like capitalized and amortized over 15 years. And that, or no, not 15, 5 years. And essentially, you used to get a nice credit and get to take all the expenses at once. So you're kind of double dipping, but now it's kind of spread out over a 5-year period. There are talks that they're going to go back to that. When, we don't know, but most of these changes are most likely going to happen in 2025 for 2026. We don't think, or sorry, either for 2025, effective 2025 or 2026. So we're hearing nothing's going to be retroactive to 2024. We hope Congress holds to that because we're already in tax season. Sometimes they make changes, in January and February, and it's retroactive, and that just throws a whole monkey wrench in the prior year. So those are some of the biggest things. There are certainly a lot more that are, on the table. There's talk of not taxing Social Security benefits. There's talk of not taxing tips. There's also talk about increasing the state and local tax deduction cap, which from TCJA was put at $10,000. They are talking of maybe putting that up to $25,000 for single individuals and $50,000 for married couples. So that would be a significant change for, I'll say, the states with higher property taxes, usually generally on the coasts. So here in Northern Virginia, that would be a big thing for most individuals as well. So there's a lot of changes. We're anticipating that this, that a tax law is coming this year. And so, I could keep talking about this for a long time, but want
That's a great
to
place
cede
to
some of my
start.
time back. Yeah.
I had one question to that. Is it true that they're talking about taking tax off of overtime? Because everybody in my company is suddenly going to go hourly. Very magically.
Yeah, there's discussion of that as well. Yes, that is also on the table, which which would significantly change things for hourly employees, essentially, especially. I don't know how that's going to look. But again, these are all still kind of preliminary stage things. These are all propositions that were put out from Trump on his campaign trail. Now that he's in office, some of this stuff is kind of starting to get some momentum. But we don't have a clear picture until Congress acts on anything. So these are just kind of the rumblings that we're hearing. So.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens if he does that to hourly, because every salaried employee in the planet will become an hourly employee overnight.
Yeah, but if I could just step in on there are rules on who can be hourly and who can be salary. So it's not like we get to choose. So as nice as it would be for us all to flip hourly and avoid the taxes on overtime, we'd have to actually qualify.
Boo. Okay, I'm done.
Sorry.
Switching gears a little bit, Meredith, so we're gonna go a little bit, we're gonna make you have a little bit of whiplash, but we're gonna go a little bit between taxes and kind of a CFO perspective, just to keep people's minds fresh. So what are the key financial metrics that small to medium-sized businesses should be tracking most closely? And why are these important?
Yeah, I mean, when we go to kind of the key metrics, there's a litany of them that you should be looking at, but probably the most important ones are, what is your annual recurring revenue? What's your monthly recurring revenue? As most of you may be working on project base, you want to make sure that you're also layering in that recurring revenue, because that gives stability to your company. So understanding what that recurring revenue is, understanding what your cost to acquire your clients. That's a big deal as well, because often in this industry, the sales cycle can be long. And so you might be spending a lot. You want to make sure that you're getting that ROI for how much you're putting in to acquire an actual client. I would also say your churn rate. So particularly if you're starting up, understanding what your fixed expenses are that you're going through every month, regardless of what your revenue is and what your runway is. So if you have capital investments, how long is that going to last you? I would say for a company in this industry, you want anywhere from 12 to 18 months worth of runway on your churn. And I said churn rate, I'm sorry, I meant burn rate. Churn rate is the churn of your clients. So not to confuse the two. And the more you churn your clients, the more it costs you. So, obviously understanding your revenue from a top line, but also understanding the mix of the business that you have, whether it's project and one-time revenue or recurring, and then understanding the margin of each of those segments and each of your customers to make sure that your pricing is right. All key data points that you can get from your financial statements. One of the keys that I see often with small businesses is when they sign up for an accounting software, it comes with a canned chart of accounts, right? And so you just assume that you need to use that and fit your business into that chart of accounts. And that's just not the case. You really want to build that chart of accounts so that it mirrors your business and how you want to look at your business. So revenue is a great example. You don't have to have one line for revenue. You can have one line for that monthly subscription service and one line for the project advisory service. That way you can see that revenue individual on your P&L every month versus having to go in and dig into the data. So it's key to set up that chart of accounts at the beginning to really tell the story of your business when you're looking at your P&L at a quick glance versus having to really dig in to the details.
Awesome. And actually, I do want to ask another kind of follow-up question to that, Meredith. What are some common financial pitfalls that small to medium-sized companies that you're seeing in your work with them should be aware of, and how can these be avoided, especially as it comes to kind of the operating cost and such of their organization? Yeah,
I would say first and foremost is focusing too much on the top line, which is your revenue, and not enough on your margins and your bottom line. And then also understanding the difference between selling work and actually getting paid for it, because that timing can be different, right? So we've sold the work, and so we think, oh, we've made $40,000 in revenue. But if your client's not paying you for 45 to 60 days, that cash isn't in your bank. And so that's going to hurt your burn rate and your cash flow analysis, right? And so you'll need a longer runway. So pay attention to cash as much as you do to revenue and the clients that you're booking and the potential revenue that they're bringing in.
Awesome. That is great advice, and a little too relatable. So thanks for bringing.
It happens to a lot of people.
Tax incentives, Brian, and credits to their advantage. Are you seeing some, especially within the tech space or, within the small to medium sized business space, that people are really leveraging to make a difference in their business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the top ones is taking bonus depreciation on fixed assets that are depreciable, less than 20 years actually. So, a lot of equipment, servers, things of that nature, can be, you can take bonus depreciation and write that all off for tax purposes in the first year. States unfortunately don't follow bonus depreciation, so you still have some. There's that first year, what you get what's called a state add back. So you still pay state taxes on those assets, but it kind of evens out over the next, the period of ownership of those assets. But that's really a major thing, I would think, in the tech space, is to get some incentive from a tax side. Another big one would be, as I mentioned before, like the research and development credit. Um, when this got changed over recently, a lot of people in a lot of different industries were pretty upset. With the new rules. Essentially, you've got to capitalize all these R&D costs. You no longer can take an expense for them in the current year. And for tech companies, these are big dollar numbers, right? So you used to be able to, deduct those costs and then also get a tax credit for a percentage of those costs as well. um, which was a pretty big boon for the tech industry, especially, but for a lot of industries. So with this recent change, a couple years, I think it was 3 years ago now, all of those things that are expenses, like labor and materials, all those things that go to research and development are no longer expenses. They have to be thrown on the balance sheet. So, and then they get amortized over 5 years. So you're essentially only getting a fifth of the cost you outlaid in that 1 year for research and development as a deduction, for tax purposes. Um, so that change really hurt a lot of companies, especially and my clients as well. I had several clients that were not too happy with those changes, and it actually, put them in taxable income situations because they no longer got the benefit of the deduction with the credit. Um, I think that there's a real big push to go back to the old rules. Kind of a have your cake and eat it too. Getting the benefit of those deductions, as well as getting the tax credit for doing those things, as well. Um, Also wanted to mention, another um, policy proposal would be to bring back what's called the domestic production activities deduction. This is, another kind of tax credit that went away with the TCJA. But it effectively, if you have domestic production activities, which can qualify under a whole host of different industries. But essentially, if you're producing something, making something in America, you get an additional deduction for that production. And I think that proposal could also be reinstituted in this new tax bill. Effectively, what they're trying to do is um, lower the tax rates for people who create things in America, which obviously has benefits. But I think that you're going to start to hear more about that as well when we start getting some more nuts and bolts to this exact proposed tax law change. Um, but I think those are some of the major things. There are other credits as well. Um, you know, the energy credits that were pretty voluminous, in the Biden administration, they're still around. But we're hearing that those are kind of gonna get gutted, in this new tax bill. So, energy efficiency, solutions like, solar, wind power, the EV credits, like all that stuff is most likely going to kind of go away, is what we're hearing, or at least be significantly reduced. Another credit that is used, that's available is work opportunity tax credits. So those are credits that um, the government gives for hiring certain individuals and target groups. That's still around. There's certainly lots of other like small credits for small businesses. States also offer different credits, for incentivizing businesses to hire from different groups as well. So there's still a lot on the table, and a lot of places that you can save some money on taxes.
Awesome. Yeah, the manufacturing one will certainly be one to watch. I know in the cybersecurity industry, of course, people are really looking at that hardware bill of materials these days and how where things are produced, manufactured, what it relates to routers or what have you. So definitely one to watch. Thanks for that update. Let's see. So while we're still talking about taxes, and we are a big technology people here, is technology changing the landscape of tax compliance and planning in any way? Do you see the IRS doing things differently, or the state of Virginia doing things differently in the way they're collecting taxes or going after people?
Sure, certainly. So, the IRS was overhauling their softwares, and they they were significantly outdated, I'll put it that way. Um, but a lot of their computer software now has been upgraded. I think that it's going to probably slow or stop altogether with the new administration. Um, but they do a lot of like the IRS specifically and the state of Virginia. They do AI matching. So if you've got taxable income reported on a 1099 or a W-2 or what have you, the government has those documents as well. And so when you file your return, they automatically match it up. So they now have instituted their automatically generated notices.
Oh.
So if you report something on your tax return that doesn't match to what the IRS has, you're going to get a notice saying, hey, this is not what we have in our files. And that's all automated now. Whereas, it used to, it used to be a lot more time consuming of a process for the IRS to do those things. But now they do that, it's pretty much automatic. So you got to make sure when you're preparing your tax returns, you enter the information correctly. Don't transpose any numbers, because I've had clients that have gotten notices where, it was an 8 instead of a 9 and they got a notice. I mean, it might have been in the, hundreds of thousands decimal place, but that's a bigger issue. But yeah, they certainly have used technology more. They're also using technology just for like desk audits as well. If perchance you get pulled for an audit, the IRS has now kind of tried to streamline that process. I have not yet been involved in one of those yet, but from what I've heard, they're a lot smoother than audits used to be. You know, uh, the last time I had an audit, the auditor came in and sat with me with paper documents for days. And now apparently they can do desk audits, in a day, just because of the technology and being able to electronically submit things and all of that. So they're getting better. They are by no means perfect. They still have a problem opening mail unless there's a check in it. They open that mail real fast and cash the check. But typically I've found that if you're sending in a form without a check, like it gets lost a lot. So they're trying to improve their processes and their online accessibility as well, to be able to respond to notices, pull information that you need. They're getting there. It's gotten a lot better, and I can only hope that it will continue to get better, but we'll see if that continues under the new administration. And then from a Virginia perspective, they do the same thing that the IRS does. They do automatic matching. And they also send out automated notices if things don't match. Their portal has gotten a little bit more user friendly, especially for making payments. Um, there's still some things that I'd like to be able to do online that you still have to call a human being, but that's part of my job anyways. Um, but yeah, Virginia's gotten better as well. But there's with technology, the way that it's expanding, and everybody's now using AI. Like it's only a matter of time before the government agencies are using that as well to kind of fill in the gaps on staffing shortages. So
Sure. No, that's fascinating. I know the state of Maryland is investing a lot in modernizing their comptroller's office and tax collection right now too. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shapes out. But thanks.
yeah, they just implemented their new website, which has taken a while to come to fruition. I think they're probably one of the last states to make payments for pass-through entities electronically. Like all my clients used to have to send checks, and they're like, "Why does Maryland still make us send a check?" And I'm like, "Because they don't have the capacity online yet." And they just instituted that like in the last 6 months. So pretty happy that they finally were able to jump on board on that. But yeah, we'll see. The comptroller has definitely gotten better, and they're being more proactive, and they're definitely um, um, communicating with the profession as well. Like I get emails from them pretty regularly on all the new updates. So I'm glad that they've finally stepped into the 21st century, if you will.
Absolutely. So thinking again back to our day to day and how we are, looking at our finances and considering them, Meredith, I'd love you to provide some context on how fractional CFOs, because we know not everybody needs a full-time CFO. So how you can work with your fractional CFO to help company leaders just understand financial performance and goals effectively to their team, maybe beyond, the C-suite.
Yeah, I think that's a great place that your fractional CFO can partner with you in being that translator and that bridge between finance and operations, and really using a language that an operator can understand and follow, versus using accounting jargon in very accounting technical type terms. And a great example is when Brian mentioned moving something to the balance sheet or amortizing it or depreciating it. Like what does that mean at the end of the day? Because how does it affect your cash flow? Because that's important. But how does it affect your P&L? So translating in that to something and showing you actually in a financial model how that impacts your cash and your P&L, and the difference, honestly, between a P&L and a balance sheet, and why you need to know the difference. Those are all important things. The other thing that a fractional CFO can do is help you establish KPIs for your business and put together a very easy to read scoreboard or dashboard for your team to look at and know whether you're achieving the goals that you set forth at the beginning of the year or the quarter, or you have room to grow and areas to improve on. I've built a lot of dashboards for operations teams that it's a quick glance and they can understand whether they're winning or losing in a quick moment. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into that with you, maybe during the questions. And then lastly, this is always a question that scares me, Brian, but are there common triggers for tax audits, and how can businesses minimize their risk of being audited?
Sure. Yeah. So there are lots of ways that can trigger an audit. You know, the the first biggest one is discrepancy in reported income. So, for a business, if you're an LLC, and you get 1099s, if you don't report everything that's on those 1099s, that's a red flag. Um, high income earners from an individual perspective are also more likely to be audited. Um, we'll say taking large deductions relative to your income is also kind of a red flag. So we'll say, if you only make $100,000 of income and you're trying to say that you gave $75,000 to charity, like, that's a pretty big flag. Like that just doesn't happen, right? So that's another one. Cash intensive businesses, which, I don't think this necessarily is, technology firms technically aren't really cash intensive, but like laundromats, retail, construction, restaurants, things of that nature, just because of the nature that they're mostly dealing with cash, although not as much anymore. Those typically get audited more. Um, if you've got a business that's consistently showing losses, and not really ever turning around into a profit, those have a higher risk of being audited as well, because in the IRS's eyes, like if you're running a trader business, like it should be for profit. It shouldn't be specifically to take deductions. That could also trigger an audit. Another one that I've seen is, large fluctuations in revenue or expenses, year over year. So, typically, hopefully most businesses, once they're, out of the growth stage, have sort of a steady line of revenue and a steady line of expenses. In the growth period, if you're in your first, we'll say 8 years, there are probably going to be some losses. You might have income one year, but, they're really looking to make sure that it makes sense, right? If you're having super large fluctuations, then that's kind of a red flag as well. Believe it or not, filing amended returns it kind of flags you at the IRS. It happens all the time. But if you're consistently filing amended returns, the IRS seems to think that means that you're doing something wrong. Even though you're catching yourself and trying to fix it, like
Right.
it just opens you up a little bit more.
Yikes. That's funny.
Another one that I've seen in audits that I've been involved with, and you've got to kind of be careful at if you're a small business owner, is trying to claim that you use your business vehicle for 100% business use. Um, you know, Typically, if you have a business vehicle and you're using it for business use, but it's available for you outside of business use, you're probably using it for some personal things. So just keeping that in mind as well. Keeping good records is always a good thing, especially with business use of of the vehicle. Um, those are quite a few, ways to minimize that risk. Make sure that you're reporting things accurately. Keep really good detailed records. Having good records is basically your safety if you ever get audited. You know, if you're taking deductions, you know, and make sure that they're reasonable. Make sure that they're ordinary and necessary business deductions and be able to substantiate them with evidence. Um, you know, if you're trying to, you know, if you don't have good records, I mean, obviously the IRS can come after you and get you, right? So making sure that everything is well recorded and well detailed is really paramount. Um, Another thing is, you know, make sure you file. Like make sure you file, try to file on time. Um, if you're, you know, if you're filing late consistently, that's also kind of a red flag for the IRS. They're like, well, why can't you get your stuff done in the amount time, even with an extension, right? As a
Yeah.
business, you typically have until September or October. As an individual, you have until October of the following year. That should be more than enough time to get all your information to get your returns in. You'd be amazed at how many people don't. Um, you know, I have some clients that are always 2 years behind, which
Oh, yeah.
makes zero sense to me. But they're they're busy people, and they're like, well, they always pay in, so they're like, I've always already
Sure.
paid in, so I'm good. Well, I'm like, well, you still got to report it though, so. Um, yeah. So those are kind of some of the things to you know, to look out for and ways to kind of mitigate those risks as well.
Cool. Good to know. That's some new things to think about. So I saw a question in the chat, and you know, now we're to the end of our prepared questions. But this is a interest for turning, you know, when an LLC should become an S corp, and different types of tax planning, I guess, advantages to each.
Um, so I mean, it kind of it depends.
Sure, very
As in
legal
every
answer.
as in every circumstance. So, you know, typically LLCs elect to be as taxed as an S corporation um, when they want to pay the owner wants a salary,
Hmm.
right? Like through a W-2. Okay, so um, timing on that is also kind of in flux. So typically, if you're a new LLC um, and you want to become an S corp, you can do so, you know, with your first tax return. You make all it is an election you make with your tax return. Um, you can also request to be an S corporation late, which is up to 3 years. It's like 3 years and 75 days after the day you want to be an S corp.
Hmm.
So there are there is time to do it if you haven't done it yet, if you just set up an LLC.
Mhm.
Um, you know, if you're already an LLC and you want to like revert to being an S corp, you know, as of like say 1/1/2024, it's a little bit late in the year because you probably should have been putting yourself on payroll for 2024. Um, if you want to do it as of 1/1/2025, you still have time to do that. Um, you know, so it just depends. Every single client I work with is a little bit different and has different factors that they need to consider when doing so. Um, you know, so again, it just kind of depends. Every situation is different.
Mhm.
But yeah, typically you want to choose an S corp if you want to pay yourself a salary. You know, a lot of the other deductions and things of that nature are similar depending on your size. You know, if you're a pretty big, if you're an LLC and you're doing, you know, you're doing millions of dollars in revenue and you're a single member LLC reported on your individual tax return, I would suggest you should probably change to being an S corp. The IRS also doesn't like Schedule Cs with millions of dollars of revenue because those those are could be there could be a lot of abuse in those kinds of entities running, we'll say, personal expenses through the business. And that's another big kind of red flag. I could going back to the audit red flags. Like if you're doing millions of dollars in revenue through a Schedule C and you're reporting it on a 1040, you should probably consult a tax advisor and talk about, maybe making an corporation election. But yeah, I hope that answered the question, but it really does depend. Every client's a little different.
Good. Good. Any other questions from the audience? Feel free to take yourself off mute or put it in the chat. Oh, we love basic questions.
There's no basic question.
I will speak this since apparently my audio wasn't shut off and I thought it was, my bad. But this is Kamal Daraja. I am COO at a company. However, this is such a basic level of just setting up a business for a startup, for somebody who's just starting. When you're going from that mom and pop phase into the larger phase, how do you set up those proper corporate like budgets? What do you do? What are the percentages you should be allocating towards marketing or towards HR, other departments? Like what's a good rule of thumb there?
Yeah, I think there's industry standards for how much you should be spending in each of those areas compare as a percent of your revenue. So that's generally the guideline that I use, but it's also what level of comfort is the leadership team comfortable with on their bottom line. So if they want a 10% margin, we may have more room to put into marketing versus an owner that wants to yield a 25% margin at the end of the year. But those are all like, as I help companies develop their budgets, those are the conversations that we have to have. And then look at, if we're trying to get to that 25% margin, how are we going to get there? Is it improving your gross margin, or is it by cutting kind of your overhead expenses, which would be marketing and HR and all of those more things you need to operate a business, but they don't necessarily generate the revenue, right?
Yep, exactly.
So from a margin perspective, it's interesting, we've got a lot of tax experts and all kinds of really powerful people on the phone. I would love to know, one of the mantras that I've kind of lived by, and I wanted to get your take on it, was for us to grow small companies, we have to either mortgage our profit, borrow money from a bank, or take investors. And so when you're counseling the small businesses, are you counseling them to funnel that money back into the organization up until like what dollar amount? Is that like 5 million, 7 million? Is it 2 million? I don't know. Or like how do you make that decision when you're counseling the businesses on when they should start worrying about 20, 25%, that kind of stuff?
It depends on a lot of things, right? It depends on how much revenue they're bringing in. What are their other cash draws? So what other expenses do they have that we have to account for? And what is their runway on their cash? So whether they got it from investors or from a loan or they're self-funding, how much of that do they have? And what do we anticipate the ROI is in it? So I would never tell somebody to go put $100,000 into a marketing plan that we think is only going to yield them $40,000 worth of business, because then that just doesn't make sense. We're upside down. So we want to make sure that we're running the metrics, and the marketing team or tool that we've chosen has proven statistics on what they yield out of the investment. So I would want to flip that and spend $40,000 in marketing to get $100,000 in revenue. Right.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like this is a QuickBooks Online question. which is a good one that we kind of hit on a little bit before, but if you're switching to a more upgraded, we'll say QuickBooks experience, so how much of a lift or change does that take? And then how much more effort for a DCAA compliant QuickBooks? We love the specificity here.
Right. I mean, I would say it depends on how basic you say your mom and pop is. Again, I think a lot of it goes down to your chart of accounts and how detailed you are in your tracking. So it's not that much of a lift. One of the things you do lose though is year-over-year comparability, right? So if you were looking at things on a very high level in 2024, but in 2025, we're going to go to a very more granular and specific level, it's not going to be apples to apples on that same granular level, but it's not a hard lift necessarily. It just takes some time and really structuring that chart of accounts so that it makes sense and it's hitting those compliance guidelines.
Yeah, and would love, I don't know if anybody on this call has experience with moving folks from like a QBO to a Dell Tech, or so I don't want to buzz market too many firms, but the others. What that transition was like. I think that's a really good question for folks.
We've actually helped taking folks from QuickBooks, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Meredith.
Go right ahead, Bob.
QuickBooks to Uninet and Deltek. So yes, it can be a lift, but it depends upon, as long as you go through the requirements, make sure everything's aligned, it can be done.
We've done the same types of transitions, and we'll tell our clients usually that unless they're getting audited or have met the requirements that, for an audit, that, you're usually good sticking with QBO because of the lift.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a business decision clearly to make that switch, and probably understanding those levers and that decision making is paramount to that. Yeah. Good. Well, thank you so much, Brian, Meredith. If it's okay, I would love to share maybe your information with some folks on this call as well. If they have any follow-up questions, as well as all of our speakers and sponsors. We know that sometimes these short kind of breakout sessions can create lots of questions when we're trying to fall asleep or, in the car the next day. So, but we will also be releasing a summary of this chat, so beyond this group. So again, feel free to share with some other of your colleagues who couldn't make it. And we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in 5 to 7 minutes. So we'll leave obviously the chat open. I will go off video for a second so we can get some water. But yeah, feel free to continue the conversation.
Got to run, but thank you, Meredith and Brian. It's very informational. Appreciate it.
Good to see you, Josh.
Good to see you again.
Thanks
Yeah.
for supporting this.
Yep, of course. See you guys.
Okay. Also, I did want to share the our pop-up happy hour that we are hosting next month, which we're excited to go to Ren Tyson's, which is in the Watermark. So yeah, we'll have some delicious food and some tasty drinks of our choice. Here is a link to also register.
I'm going to chime in there, Tasha, for anybody on this call that's going to attend. When you park in there, make sure you bring inside your, there's a parking garage, but bring your parking ticket inside because they will validate at the front desk.
Yes. We love free parking, validated parking.
You really do.
We'll give people maybe one more minute or 2 minutes to transition. If everybody got up and did some stretches. If this were an in-person, we did talk about our fabulous marketing and membership coordinator, Jeanette, is also a yoga instructor. So we talked about doing some yoga stretches in between. I'm sure we're all stretched. Okay.
I think I need some liability insurance for pulled muscles.
That's funny. That's funny. I'm sure there's some type of legal version of this is only, please only do what your doctor would recommend. Sign a release. Okay. Welcome, Julie. Glad you could join us. Add a pin.
Nice to be here. How are you all?
Good. We just dove deep
Doing
into
great.
the world of finance. So
Excellent.
we are primed. We are ready. Okay. Yeah. All right, so we're going to move into a fun conversation about marketing, sales, RevOps, the whole gamut. Again, we look forward to learning from each other and from our fabulous panelists. So I'm going to take a step back a little bit from the moderator seat. I will let these two wonderful folks introduce themselves.
I'll go ahead and start. Although Kamal, if you've started, your looks like your microphone's on mute. So if you're already in the middle, you want me to go? Okay. Hi. As I said, very happy to be here. My name is Julie Rutherford, and I am from Shine Management. We are based in Charlottesville, and we provide comprehensive business services to small to medium businesses and beyond. And that includes everything from finance, like you just talked about, to marketing, HR, technology. We really help leaders focus on growing their business versus being like knee deep or even further into the weeds. And I handle marketing strategy for Shine, and excited to talk to you guys about lots of different things. So.
And I'm Kamal Dereja. You heard me ask the very basic question for finance. I am COO. I started as CMO here, really in our company because as Meredith mentioned, when business isn't hitting certain revenue marks, you start cutting certain programs. Our first thing to go was marketing. So it's part of but I still am the one that everything marketing rolls up to. So and I'm actually in the process of setting up new things right now that we can do on a, $0 budget. What can you do with marketing with zero marketing dollars? But yeah, that's where I am with marketing. I think one of the topics that we had brought up, Julie and I had discussed, is how AI plays into that. I think using AI, using the different AI tools that are out there right now, it's imperative. I mean, I personally don't recommend using ChatGPT all the time because everything in ChatGPT becomes, open for everybody to use. But unless you're paying for the enterprise version, which means you really don't have money issues, which means you're good. You can probably afford a really good marketer to come in and take care of everything and be a good content writer. For me, for right now, what I've been doing personally has been Jasper AI, which is costing me, I think, $99 a month. And that's a great content writer. Especially considering I don't have a technical background, writing technical things is a bit difficult for me personally. But I can read it, I can review it, and I can have somebody technical on my team review it to make sure it makes sense. So I have a lot of content that I put in there that I can create from there and then edit it myself, make sure it looks good, make sure it sounds good, and put it out there. The one thing that I love about Jasper is that it then does, when it's creating these blogs and creating content, it is maximizing keyword usage for SEO, for all the other things that marketers pay attention to. There are also, what did I start this month? I started using free content calendar generators. So basically I just go in and I'm like, I want to talk about this month. And it created a 4-week plan for me and said, this is what you need to do. I put in the prompt of create a mix of social media content types, from video to blogs to polls to, I put in all the things in there, like, tell me exactly what to do. And so I created a calendar. I then take that calendar, and my company has an internal version of ChatGPT, but it's not enterprise, it's our program. It's an AI, generative AI program. So I just went in there and I was like, all right, tell me exactly what I need to do for this content topic. And so it actually created an infographic. It created the infographic content for me, so then I could go into Canva and put that in. And this is what I'm still playing with a little bit because it didn't turn out perfectly, but I went and I put in, this is the information I need in a infographic, because Canva now has a section where you can actually tell it what to create for you and it'll design it for you as well. And I did that, but the problem with using that is that there's text in there. The text is not editable, and so I have to rewrite all the text anyway. So it's because it misspells everything. I have no idea why my phone is blowing up. I've gotten 7 calls in the last 3 minutes, and I have do not disturb turned on. So I'm sorry if you keep hearing blowing up. I have no idea why it's not keeping me away from getting these calls.
I'll jump in for a minute and tell you all, Jasper, I know Kamal mentioned Jasper, which is something that a lot of people use. I have become really addicted to Claude.ai, which you all may have used, Claude like the name. And I found after using ChatGPT or OpenAI for a while that, I don't know, I felt like it sounded to AI. And this was really writing everything from blogs to email intros, sales nuggets, as I call them, or, marketing copy. And so I had someone recommend Claude, and it just is something that I find you can direct a little bit better and have it sound more professional. And I end up, I still edit. I mean, I think of AI for generative kind of purposes, especially, the copy side. I think of it as kind of like my intern or my junior copywriter, or this kind of thing. So I know a lot of people feel like it's cheating, or you're not doing your work, but you have to feed in a lot of information anyway, and then I'm kind of using it to polish up things. I've even been able to train it on voices, right? So if you want your voice to be friendly and authentic and authoritative, whatever the words are, that has been super helpful. And I've even lately I tried, in the same way that you would write, and spend a good amount of time writing a quality marketing brief for whatever whatever you're wanting, including like taglines. I fed in a marketing brief, and in the same way you get better results from designers and copywriters, I found that to be just super helpful. So I don't know. I'm really curious as to what other AI tools you all may have used, or just are using. Does anyone feel like dropping someone in the chat or just talking about it?
I'll bite on that one so you don't have a bunch of
Yeah, I
different.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Dr. Timothy Shelbach, I'm with Panacity LLC. We're actually a cybersecurity company out of Maryland, and also work in Virginia as well. So we use AI a lot. We also secure AI and work with our customers on a bunch of areas and fields out there. It's actually pretty interesting because we use a medley of them. Like you'd stated, there's so many different sort of GPTs or AIs or general language based LLMs that are currently out there, and they all have some very different like feel and drawbacks and other things. One of the things that we've been doing is actually downloading the models locally and running them locally to safeguard against a few things, right? So privacy concerns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Such as where is your data going? Who's looking at it? Is it in the country? Is it somewhere else? Right. So those are the privacy concerns that they have
Yeah,
out there.
makes sense.
Obviously, the privacy contracts, if you go take a look at those, they kind of tell you what they are. And by the way, ChatGPT, you could actually go in and opt out if you're paying the $20 a month or the $200 a month version. So the pro or the standard user paid for versions can be opted out of. Microsoft has got their AI and it's
Mm-hmm.
slithered into Windows. And this one is the one you got to really watch out for because their core AI has been sort of with a certain Windows update has already been installed. And then now you're starting to see in your Outlook or your Excel and all your documents, and Adobe is the same way. They've been pushing the LLMs directly into their applications. So now all of a sudden you have not just the AIs that you've been interacting with, but also now a bunch of different AIs that are starting to infiltrate your system without your knowledge or permission in most cases, because they just kind of come with the product now. So I find
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things are interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you feel about those elements or so far?
Lots of experimentation you guys have been doing. I think that's excellent. Kamal, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that is actually one of the concerns, as I had mentioned. So we're using our internal product called Neuronet, because that was one of my biggest concerns. There's a lot of technical documents I want to be able to upload when I'm creating content,
Mm-hmm.
so I can put that in there. I want all of the information about the product put in, so that way, if I want something written, it's whether it's a white paper or if it's something that I don't know, okay, I'll tell you guys, like, gosh, the government in India asks for the weirdest things that I've never seen, but don't work in India full time, so I don't know. But it's one of those things where they ask for documentation that for my team that was writing all of the paper, we were based in the US, and it was really difficult to figure out how to pull some of that information out into a
Mm-hmm.
document be worthy of a good government contract in India, right? And so we used Neuronet and we did what we could to create it, pull the content out, do all of that, and take care of that. Because again, that is a big concern is the privacy
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Tim, I think that what you did and then downloading it locally, that's the smartest way to do it. It's kind of like when you get to even your websites, right? It's the same thing. It's if you're using, oh, like Wix or WordPress or any of those for your websites, how do you keep that safe? Because that's like all of these other issues come in for privacy and things like that when you're using these third parties, that if you have anything in cybersecurity and you're a cybersecurity company, how is that not your first thought? Right? Like, how are you not making that the biggest question? Like, how do I make sure that my company stays safe? But I think that I don't know, beyond this, it's just like, taking all the precautions we can is the best thing we can do, making sure that nothing that is definitely not to be shared with the broader world, that doesn't go into any chat GPT or open AI system. Being really careful about things like that and making sure that the employees know not to
Mm-hmm.
upload anything or download anything. I mean, basic cybersecurity practices, right? Implementing
Mm-hmm.
them even for marketing at this point.
Mal, I'd love to return back to what you were talking about just in terms of content marketing as a strategy. And I'm sure everyone, or a lot of you, you're either thinking about it or you've already dipped your toe in it or have a robust program. But I that in terms of working for smaller companies where you have minimal to zero budget, this is really a big place where I've always started and thinking about what assets you already have, whether those are case studies you can pull from and put little kind of chunks of information out on your very LinkedIn or whatever other channels, important stats, customer testimonials, blogs if you have a chance to write them. And a lot of times I know, Kamal, you mentioned running blogs or other pieces of content past some of your technical experts. I've had a lot of luck with doing little kind of mini interviews with some of the technical experts you may have of just, what's the top question you get asked by a customer about X, or whatever it is, or what's your advice on customers or clients trying to do Y. And it's a great way where you could literally line it up and you have your one person, three people do something like this in the course of an hour after you've given them some questions, and just line it up. And and this, they say, and I've seen this myself, that you don't want these to be super, super polished. You want them to be authentic. So you can literally do these with your iPhone. And, if you don't know how to do it, you can find someone really inexpensively, or your college student or whatever, someone to cut the videos 15 seconds. And I think there are just lots of creative things you can do that way. And again, produce them yourselves and test it and see what works. And again, that's your branding right there. That's starting to engage with people. And then, you can get to the lead gen side. And maybe once you want to pay a little bit. But I'm curious as to how far people have taken the content marketing side, and what questions you all might have, whether for two of us or just for the group.
So Julie, have you used like application platforms like Zapier or like make.com to do pipeline creation? I've seen a lot of like content creators, mostly in the social media space. Those platforms are basically like workflow where you just drag and drop like a series of elements on there.
Yeah.
One of the ones I think that Zapier or make.com really do kind of well is that they have a pattern, if you will, to where it's like, oh, go scrape a site, essentially drop it in like a Google Doc or a Google Sheet for content, essentially, right? And then send that to a GPT, summarize said content, and then post it on these 45 social media sites, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the way that people kind of did all that stuff at staging and social media a while ago. At least that's what we've worked with in the past is the Hootsuites. But now we're starting to see like those functional automations to where you can get continuous customized content. So for instance, we actually used to pay someone to go out and curate content. They would look at blogs, they would look at a bunch of different places. Now these automated platforms can essentially scrape all that into one set of documents, and then we can go through and summarize the documents. And we can even build like a tab in there and say, hey, on Tuesdays, use these themes or look for these theme things. And these platforms are just kind of automate that. I've
Mm-hmm.
always wondered, like years ago, when I used to see people with LinkedIn where they're like, I know this person, how's he posting 45 times a day? Does he have time?
Yeah.
Does he actual work or
Right.
not? That's the way that we actually brought in a firm and they kind of help set those kind of things up.
Oh, that's great.
How are
I
you
haven't,
guys taking advantage of those types of automations? And
yeah,
that's
I
where I see
haven't,
the paradigm shift going.
I think that's amazing. And I haven't personally used something that can do that full thing. You mentioned Hootsuite or Hubs, things like that, where we could at least take, okay, we've got this body of content and let's, pull snippets or pieces from here and then, schedule it out that way. But I'm gonna check those out because I haven't had the opportunity, I haven't been in a company where we either could afford it or, had that broad of kind of strategy we wanted to do. But that sounds pretty excellent.
And I think marketing companies are shifting to utilizing these types of technologies to sort of automate things to be more verbose for their customers in reduced labor context, right? So that way you can just pay for the expert's time on doing like scheduling, curation, sort of the branding element, setting messaging based on, what is it you're trying to get out there about the organization and bring awareness to said
Mm-hmm.
organization and whatnot. I think that there's value in that. And I think that a lot of these automation things will drive down the prices because all the minutia stuff that was a time sink before where you'd have to like draft up something and
Oh
proofread it,
yeah,
send it around
it's
to
a
a team,
lot.
and then like the hours like probably takes 100 hours to get one article out with just team reviews. Like everyone does it for an hour, they get back and forth. It's 45 revisions, right? Stuff like that. So I think AI is going to sort of help and accelerate that. And I think you alluded to it earlier to where it's not really replacing jobs. It's sort of enhancing the job that you already do and gives you the ability to do it quicker, better, faster.
Yeah, you
one
can
thing that
scale
AI
it. Yeah.
Right. And then
Yeah.
one thing AI lacks is creativity. It'll never have that human aspect of the creativity in experiential drive and things like that. It's a pure logic machine, so it's not going to understand message and nuance when communications is an emotional medium, not a sterile medium of like scientific journals, right? So it's yeah, it's a very different I think animal out there. So it's definitely not going to be replacing at least key people anytime soon.
Agreed.
I agree with that too. I think it's all about, and I've told this to people that want to go into marketing. I had a friend of mine recently tell me she was going to potentially go back to school and get her marketing degree. And I very specifically said, make sure you focus on how AI impacts marketing, because honestly, if you don't, you're going to be left behind in another year. Like, this is it. This is it. If you don't know how to maximize AI usage for marketing at this point, there's no way marketers are going to last. And right now, exactly. And I have this one lady that I follow, Dr. Anushka, and I always mess up her last name, so I'm not going to attempt it. But she's a she's a marketer at a big cybersecurity company. But her work in AI marketing is by far some of the best I've seen. What she teaches and how to prompt, what she teaches and how to do all these things. She is amazing. She's just somebody that's uh really learned how to best get the information you want from sources such as ChatGPT and Jasper and Claude, what prompts to put in to get you exactly what you're looking for in a first draft that is going to be beyond anything that I'd ever be able to create in my first draft, because normally I'm doing it and I still have 7 iterations that come after, because I'm like, oh, wait, I didn't like that. Let's try it this way. Let's use this tone instead. Let's do this instead. But I think that's another thing, learning those AI prompts and how to ask for what
Yeah.
you want. That's a huge thing to learn.
Well, look, think of it like this, Kamal. As we go forward into the future, a lot of things that we used to do in the past are just going to come up over and over again, right? So it's really funny because like AI in the classroom, teachers are treating that as they did in my day with Cliff Notes, right? Oh, that's cheating, right? To be able to use these tools. And then the same thing with when you went to college and you're like, I have to learn office productivity software, like in the 1990s and maybe early 2000s. So what did you get? You got a class in like Word and Excel and PowerPoint and how to like put things together in a very basic way. I think collegiate institutions for even high school curriculum will probably be coming out with these exact curriculum strategies on how to effectively engage with said tool to get what you want. And I think the next generation coming in behind us is going to learn and leverage those things. And some of us old dogs will be taught some of the new tricks. Those of us at least that'll be embracing it. There's those of us that like, oh, my font's green instead of blue. I hate this, right? So some people don't embrace change as well, or change in tooling or technology or paradigms. And that's really what we're seeing here is a paradigm shift in all aspects and not just marketing. My developers who develop now develop 45 times faster because instead of sitting there for 15 hours debugging lines of code, they can send that into AI and it debugs it in seconds and they can just concentrate on being creative and doing the thing they love, right? Code review, thing of the past for us, right? Review of documentation for errors and omissions, legal reviews of things. Now, there's so many different things that a business can use that AI element in every aspect. By all means, it's not replacing anyone, but it's also it's a bit of a shortcut or a tool to be able to sort of time condense a lot of productivity things that are just time wasters and time sink overall, right? Productivity increaser is what I call it. But again, it has to be used in a proper and responsible way.
Yep.
Speaking
I mean,
of product,
Yeah,
go ahead,
sorry.
Kamal. Go ahead.
We say the same thing. That's how, it's like, that's why using these tools right now, I was able to create that, week-long plan, put it in and do it all in 4 hours, 5 hours, right? Do that. That's a huge savings of my chunk of time. Like, I don't have even 5 hours. This was weekend work I did because didn't have 5 hours during the work week, but I found the 5 hours over the weekend and I created it, did it, great. And so yes, using it for the efficiency purpose, definitely. Julie, make your comment, but I wanted to circle back to something you said too.
Yeah, sure. I was actually going to say you can even, I mean, this is part of marketing, but it's something for, I think, executives, leaders of any kind. I've worked with this AI expert that is not in the marketing space, but one thing that he uses it for is, he's super creative. So he will literally go on a walk. He has all these thoughts going on, whether it's product, marketing, sales, and he's going on a walk with this, with his earbuds talking right into notes. And he's just saying, what about this? And I'm thinking about this, and blah, 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 or maybe it's some notes that you're trying to get your brain around something for a meeting you have. And then, you pull those notes then into a chat GPT and you say, organize this into some kind of outline, right? And so I have found that to be helpful setting up, even for kind of presentations like this or other kinds of discussions you're going to have, because sometimes things come out free form, and just think about how much time you take writing it down and then trying to organize it. So that's kind of something else, particularly for really busy people, that just can help you overall.
Yep.
Go for it, Kamal.
I wanted to go back to, since, we have some startups on here, in terms of branding, what would you recommend with your expertise in branding? What would you recommend for them to focus on in terms of how do you define your voice? How do you define what you really want your story to be? And how do you
Yeah, it's something, it's hard and it's fun, and as you guys know, totally crucial. I think you've got to really think, whatever size company, but particularly if you're smaller and it's kind of, coming out, you've got to really look, one, at kind of what your competitors, what are their claims that they're making in terms of how are they unique, what's different, what they, how they benefit the customer. And then it's really important to talk to really all of your internal people, even if that's 3, 10, but in terms of going through branding exercises, it's a little bit of an interview process where you need to get the opinions of, well, not just the opinions, but what do your technologists feel is unique about the product? What do your account people think is unique about the product or service? So you can come in there and turn that, it's important to get all of that, but then you have to put it in terms and language that your customers, are going to understand, right? So this is, okay, we do X, Y, and Z. Then it gets into what's the benefit? What's the benefit to the customer? And really making sure that you can back it up, right? Because a lot of people might say, our product saves you time, allows you to, I don't know, be more accurate, protect your company better. Um, is everyone saying that? If everyone's saying that, is there something you can add about your customer service, or how you help people integrate so it's really looking at that. And and it can take a little while, right? And sometime, one of the places I worked, where we had no money, we went to some of our important clients, right? Who, and a few people who weren't clients, either people who had former not signed back on to us, but were still willing to talk to us, just to get their opinion on what they found to be unique about us, not unique, and that was really helpful, because there were some things that one of our key claims we were making about it had to do with service and, really paying attention to the customer, and they didn't care about that. They really just wanted to know the results. It was just so, I recommend, which, I mean, it makes sense, but it just helps you focus in. And from there, that's, as you can imagine, that's a lot of strategy briefing. It's a lot of, I remember writing this thing over and over again for about five times to get to the point where I had a really strong brief, that was like unique selling proposition, proof points, and even under that, do you have any numbers that can support it? Retained clients or customer satisfaction. And then you can hand that, once you have all that information, then you can hand that, whether it's a copywriter or you've gotten really good at ChatGPT or Claude, to start actually writing out some copy and seeing how that works. So, some thoughts. So, Kamal, what have you done in that space? Any recommendations you have?
I redid all of our branding a while ago. working through, okay, this is one thing. I don't want to bring up my current company. I've done better work at other companies because the founders are willing to listen to me. I think that is a struggle that I currently constantly have, is just not being heard, and the time that it's timely for us in this moment. In this world, one thing that I've always done in the past has just been to go through and talk to even the employees internally, and you
Yeah.
learn how they work, you learn what they feel like the work, what's it like to work at the company. You get the voice of the company usually sometimes by talking internally, right? You get to hear how they talk about the products, how they talk about what they work on, and that excitement that's there can help you kind of maneuver it a little bit and maybe refine the voice that the customers hear even more, right?
Yeah.
For me with Tech Monks, I'll tell you, just getting my logo changed took 6 years of constant prodding.
Wow. Yeah.
If I show you what the old logo looked like, it mm, mm. It was very intriguing. It was a very interesting logo. That's all I gotta say. It had very interesting elements. I'm like, what story is this telling? Why do you have a Facebook-like shape? Like, because there was like a blue color that was close to Facebook's color, and the shape was close to that, like, the Facebook square that they've had for so long. And I just didn't get it. I just didn't get
Yeah.
it. Oh, then there was an arrow that went up from one of the letters, which again, are we a finance company? Because what does that arrow mean? To me, an arrow is associated more with financial stuff and revenue and operation, well, revenue stuff, not software. What story is this telling? And so finally I just said, I was like, can we just make it text? I gave all these iterations throughout the entire time I was here, or those when I first started, of different variations, playing off of monks, playing off of tech, playing off of all of these things. Nothing was liked, nothing was accepted. So I said, okay, great. Can I just focus on letters? I was like, you are an ex-IBM guy. Let me bring you just letters. It'll just be Tech Monks. That's it. And at least this way, as we go on, we can just keep improving just the letters. However, me being me, I need a fun element somewhere. So I took the T and the M from Tech Monks and I made a symbol that's like a little weird. I had my designers, because I had designers then, make a very unique symbol just for us. And I now put that symbol on lots of little other elements, such as instead of having different logos for each product, which is what we had before, unified that into one, where now we have monk bots that are dressed differently, but every single one of them has the TM on the forehead. And so that way that's there. And so you see the unifying elements there. But then everything is dressed differently, different colors, different whatever, everything's used differently. But if I put them together, they are basically my superhero team, which is how I want to keep referring to them, as a
I
little
like that.
superhero
That's cute.
enterprises. Yeah.
That's memorable. And I think you're right that it is, depending on how big the company is. If it's on the larger side, this is a huge stakeholder management kind of change management thing. I think it's a lot easier. The last time I had to do this, it was a much smaller company. But it is, I'm sure you guys have read this, getting people on the same page and behind it is just so crucial, or they're just, you're going to continue to hear things of, I don't like our site, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. And we want people to feel ownership. I'm interested if anyone, I know I keep asking you guys questions, but just kind of some of the brand challenges you all are having, because it's can be everything from, because it can be pretty overwhelming, right, to start. So it's everything from, are you guys, are the majority of people kind of at the, I don't really know where to start with this, to how do we get feedback? Exactly what you're talking about, Kamal. I can't get buy-in. Does anyone want to share kind of some of their challenges or just their questions? Because I know I can't tell who is in marketing, who's not, and in the attendee pool.
And part of this is also the fact that I think we're almost at the time that we'd be opening for questions anyway. So
Yeah, it's a good
does
time to
anybody
open
have
it up.
questions? questions, concerns, a topic that we haven't brought up in our long winding road of conversation. I'm sorry, as moderator, maybe I should have taken some extra ADHD medication.
I think,
Focus better.
I think we could talk about any of these topics for a super long time. I appreciated the deep conversation on AI. I think, brand is such I think so central to anything you really do, right? If you don't understand your own identity and your own purpose and what your voice is and how you differentiate yourself and all of that, and you don't have a unifying visual theme, it's really hard, and anybody who knows us knows that we went through a rebrand in the last 4 months. And we had not spent a lot of money or time on marketing because we knew this was coming for several years. And anyways, I say all this to say it's definitely a challenge. I think for us, what I've learned in marketing, just my 2 cents, is that you will feel like you keep repeating yourself, and that's okay. Like, the message is very strong in your head, but it will take a long time for other people to get it. And I think as long as you're consistent, it will probably take more time and more repetition than you think it will. It's just what
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think getting the message out there is the hardest, but also being able to figure out how to refine that voice. And by the way, guys, a lot of marketing is just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. I mean, you don't know what's going to resonate with your customer. You know what's going to resonate with potential customers. Take chances. When you are smaller, take all the chances you can. Because if you don't, you're really not going to figure out what that true message is, what the true voice is. I think I played with the voice of the tone I wanted for various collateral and everything else, to the point that I now have it refined to exactly what I want to, and I know how to put it into Jasper. And I know how to put it into Internet. I know how to ask for the prompts of, make sure you put in this tone with this tone with this tone with this tone, because I want it funny, educational, informative. I want humor used in it. That is imperative to me, because I don't think that, and then of course pulling in superhero elements, that's also very important. But being able to refine that and say, this is what I want. I want people reading our blogs and reading other stuff and chuckling at some parts. That's what I would like to see, because if I read a blog that's very informative, great, I'm going to remember certain things. But if I remember a blog that's informative and funny, I tend to recommend it and share it more, right? And that's also
deciding what your personality is, right? Whether you're making me think too, Kamal, of I definitely, this is a little, you can apply this to business in general, but in marketing, definitely try to keep that test and learn focus, both because things are changing so much, they change all the time. And you just don't, especially if you don't have a lot of cash and time to research a ton of stuff up front, the test and learn is a great way. And that, again, it could be on the brand side. I'm thinking a lot about paid advertising, whether it's Google ads, whether it's different kinds of social ads. And it, in addition to kind of just getting those learnings and being able to optimize and iterate, I think it's also good if you have teams. That's a really good mentality to get people into, that it's not about the perfect answer, it's about pushing forward. And, you have less fear, I think, of people being afraid that they're going to mess up. So that, I'm always have the test and learn going in my head. I also was interested, and this is a bit of a shift, but Kamal and I had talked a little bit about, you've obviously got the lead gen side, right? So you're needing to pull in leads, but then it's kind of like, what do you do with them, right? Because everyone has this, you're kind of rushing to that finishing line of getting a lead in, and then how do you make sure that you're keeping those leads? And this ties into the content discussion that earlier, that in setting up one of these things for one place where I worked, we took, we had, it was a recruiting company, so we had, job seeker guide to resumes, or hiring manager top 10 questions, for interviews, or you name it, and really taking those core content pieces and spinning them out in all different kinds of places. So for example, when we had someone come in, as a job seeker or as a hiring manager who wanted to find someone, an employee, we had these set messages, really a nurture campaign, right? So you're talking about at this point, lead nurture. You've got them in the door. And we used to say, a friend of mine used to say, you've invited them to the party, right? They've accepted, and how do you keep them there, right? And so we would have, ours were weekly and then bi-weekly, where at first it was kind of an intro. We're so glad you're here. Thank you for registering, or thank you for checking out our white paper. That's how you generated the lead. And then the next week, that's where you could have our little FAQs, or, here are some top tips from one of our experts. And you can go on, I think most of the time they say I've seen it in a couple different ways, 5 to 7 touches before people kind of finally start feeling like they might really want to talk about it or be more comfortable really interacting on the sales side with you. So I found that to be a super fun project, and it really bore fruit. So I don't know what anyone else has done on the, like Tasha, for example, to put you on the spot, what you guys do on the membership side, because you have many audiences.
Yeah, that's been a big challenge for us, because we do have so many different stakeholders, and just try to help people lead the way and make sure that we're giving them the information that's valuable to them, and we're not just spamming them with a bunch of information so that they're like, oh my gosh, none of this is relevant to me. So I think there was some good conversation earlier about how to make things more personalized, and how to really just give people information they need. And by segmenting your list, I know that's like a big theme right now in the association world, and I'm sure we're not unique.
Yeah.
But again, making sure we're really like understanding our mailing list when it comes to email marketing, and understanding our segments on different social platforms, and what's going to resonate. Yeah, we use events as a big way to do lead gen. But we're always like, how can we be better on LinkedIn? Like there are companies that as soon as you liked it, like a post, you get invited to like the page. And I mean, no matter how we feel personally about that, as a marketing tool, it's probably pretty helpful to get people in. And yeah.
As y'all talk about this, I'm just sitting here listening to it, and I agree with what you all are saying. I think the other thing you need to think about, the small companies that are getting started and trying to figure out which way to go, is, yes, you said to try some different things and everything else. You're in a networking group right now. There's probably other folks that you network with. Reach out to those folks and ask them, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? The other thing you want to challenge yourself with, if you happen to be the business owner, or challenge the business owners who may have put their own website up or something, they believe that it's the greatest thing in the world. It may not say what the message is. And that's the challenge. If there is someone that's putting these things together that is not in the marketing, that's not in the strategy, they are putting something out there that they think is unbelievable. Why won't anybody come and do business with me? But you need to reach out and ask for feedback from folks, and make sure the message that you are trying to share that differentiates you is getting across and has that call to action. I believe they're the biggest things that can get that draw coming into you, whether you're using ChatGPT, all those other things that y'all talked about, AI. Obviously you want to qualify it. You want to make sure it's good information, but I really believe you need to reach out to your folks that and trust. You're going to meet again in February, potentially, right? Meet again in March, somebody else, or another networking organization. Ask folks for their feedback. Ask them, like you said, with your existing clients, why'd you choose us? Really? I had no idea. I wouldn't have put that up there at the top of the list. But they're the kind of things I believe you can share. And I just wanted to point that out.
Bob, you made me also think of tools, because I think as we've talked about a number of different tools, whether it's AI or Kamal, I'm trying to remember of the name. I don't know if you said the name of the content calendaring tool, but that's
I didn't. I just Googled free content calendar generator.
Yeah.
And so I've been testing out 3 or 4 of them and trying to see which one I like the best. I as a silly person, I did not mark the one that I liked the best. I just bookmarked them all.
Right.
But now I'm very confused as to which one created the calendar I like the best.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just, I love these kind of groups because, everybody's finding different tools, and it's really hard to stay on top of every single piece of this. And so that's something else that I think, whether it's, you can even put that stuff out on a LinkedIn post for yourself of just getting people to comment in. But yeah, Bob's point about just getting other people's feedback and ideas, it's really crucial, I think, important for your success, no matter what component of marketing or product development, sales
And
you're
to
in.
that
So
point, to that point with the tools, remember the one that I brought up to you, which I was interviewing somebody and he recommended that we look into this. Hold on, I
that's
have to pull
amazing.
it up again. Yeah, it's actually a really good website to go to for anybody with a small limited budget and you only have one person working anyway. You know what I mean? If it okay, yeah, it's groupbyseotools.org. Literally you can get in on a license if somebody, it's basically a company or whoever that you get together, 5 people want it, they go for the $60 one, but then you split that $60 into 5 different ways, so now you're paying $12 a month versus $60 a month.
Yeah,
And so
this
it's
is amazing to me. Yeah.
yeah, I think that it's exactly, when I found it, I saw it, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome, this is how you save money and not spend, the 99. Now, unfortunately, with Jasper AI, I'm going to do that because I don't want all my documents shared with 4 or 5 other companies, right? But for some of the other stuff, if I just want it crawling my website for SEO, yeah, no, I don't care. I'll share. You can look at my analytics.
That was
Cool.
the first thing I thought of, Kamal, and we haven't, I know we're not touching on everything, but SEO in terms, if we're talking about things that are, less expensive, or you're not having to pay out cash versus, lift heavy or lifting kind of in time internally. Some of these SEO tools are, they're expensive. And these are things that, again, you mentioned crawl your site, or they help you identify the right keywords that you want to put on your pages and how to measure it. You can look for competitors. And one of them that I like is called SEM Rush, but it's not cheap. And that's the first thing. I haven't looked into it yet, Kamal, but that's the first thing. I saw it on the list and I was like, wow, because that's kind of the gold standard and the idea. So I'm so happy you mentioned it, and I would definitely encourage everyone to go because there's so many tools that maybe just aren't available to you because of the budget. So but yeah, SEO Moz would be, SEM Rush would be what I would check out if you guys are wanting to learn a little bit more on the SEO side, kind of how your site's doing. So
I put the site in the chat so everybody can see that too. I am definitely somebody that would recommend that to any startup, anybody just kicking off or that's still in your infancy of your company growth, or if you're just saving money because, like my company, we're not in infancy, but we're cutting costs
I was going
because
to say, no one's giving out marketing dollars and hasn't been in my world for about 10 years. So, or more. So, you know what, you reminded me of as well, Kamal, is, as we were talking about kind of setting up lead nurture, these funnels that are going to pull people from marketing all the way to conversion. Some of these, I think a lot of people can feel like they're out of reach too, because you've got tools like Marketo, which is incredibly expensive. You've got Salesforce, these CRMs, which feels like, but there are a number of less expensive ones as well. There's one called Monday, and there are a number of others. I was looking up some new ones that you can just go out there and look up, low cost CRM. They're not going to be, they're not going to be obviously as robust as these others, but you may not need that. You may just be able to need to set up a couple of segments, or not even. It's just customer comes in and we want to kind of send them this kind of content. So I wouldn't get discouraged if it feels like they're not the only tools, the big ones that you've heard of. So
yep. I was going to say to the point that, I don't know, to one of the statements Timothy made earlier, it's HubSpot has had this feature for many years now, which I don't think many people really realize that it had. Now they've taken it and they pulled it away from one of the services and now it's its own product. But it was automation before automation was really into like the marketing
Mhm.
stuff. And it
Mhm.
was my favorite tool to use because I would go in, I'd set up a contact campaign within that, and it automated everything where it would even stop it if the client responded. Because as you said, 5 to 7 touches, which is the normal rule of thumb. I would set up a thing for 10 touches. And if at any point in there the client responded, it would stop. It would immediately stop. And it would be like, okay, great. Now the process has ended here. But it would alert me too, saying, hey, by the way, make sure you're responding to this person. But it was great because it was an automation tool of just being able to automate every aspect of your sales campaign, marketing campaign. And it it didn't automate certain things, such as you have to call the person, like, you're trying a phone call, mixing that in with an email, mixing that in with an in-person meeting. But what it would do is send you an email saying, hey, by the way, you got to call this person today at some point. Make sure you call them because this is the thing to do today for this campaign. Now I feel like I would have that added into a task tracker tool, and I would want that to put the calendar. Okay, that's me personally. I just wanted to automate everything and just drop it in my calendar. Be like, okay, yeah, I have to call this person from this time to this time. But I love that tool. I think there's other ones out there now, but that's one that when it started, it was great. I got business out of it. So I really appreciated that. All right.
Great.
Do we have any other questions from anybody or any thoughts from anyone about any other topics within marketing? Or did I come up? I don't know. I had another thought. Julie said something that I was like, oh, I'll bring that back up too. But now I don't remember.
I'd love it if anyone knows or has any other tools that they've been using or are curious about to drop it into the chat, just in the spirit of helping others have learned some new tools. So
Yeah, I mean, for us, one of our biggest tools is our website. So just really digging into some of the Google Analytics, like not fancy tool at all, but really helpful to kind of understand where people are going, how long they're spending on those sites, it's really been a helpful tool to figure out what campaigns are working, right? Because we'll sometimes set up special landing pages for certain things. So yeah, it's been very, very helpful for us. It's a very foundational tool, we'll say.
and if you're feeling right now, because we're throwing out a lot of things, and if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, kind of how do I do this? If I put my old recruiting hat on, I think of everything from if you were doing a full-time hire, a marketing generalist should be able to do a good chunk of this, if not all. And you wouldn't have to hire someone too senior. You've obviously got the freelance route, you've got smaller agencies, because I'm sure you don't have room, but you've got smaller marketing, other kind of service agencies that you can use. So there are a lot of different options because, certainly our goal is not to have everyone feeling like, oh my God, I have even more work. This is horrible. Like, what am I supposed to do? These are a lot of ideas. And again, um, it's just there are just a lot of options to get it done. If you would ask me, like, okay, if I had a company and I have to pick one thing that I'm going to do right now, I'm actually going to say two things, but basically one is just to, make sure what you want to say kind of here, and this gets into the brand, make sure you know what you want to say, whatever your message is, whether you're doing branding, engagement, lead gen, just try as best you can without spending a year, again, test and learn, try to find what's unique, what you can say about your product that's unique. And again, it doesn't mean it has to have these bells and whistles. It could also be about how you deliver it or about how you treat your customers and then if I was going to do one thing, it would be this content marketing. You know, it would be establishing, and you can start out by doing a month's worth of content, you know, pick 3 things you want to focus on and then try them out. And I would say focus on LinkedIn and focus on some kind of email follow-ups, even if you do the follow-ups by hand. So that's my recommendation, is try to find 3 pieces of content, test them out, and see what happens. Because the cool thing is then if you happen to get some reaction, a lot of us, you know, you get a couple leads and they could be big business. And then all of a sudden, maybe you can hire someone, or maybe, you know, so if I had to boil it down, content marketing and using the right message, and don't be afraid to just try some stuff out, and you'll know if it's not right because people will tell you. So
Exactly. I agree with that 100%. And you know, having a $0 budget does not mean you can't accomplish what you need to accomplish.
Yeah.
Um, as to Julie's point, thought leadership, that's the easiest thing to hit. That is the easiest thing to do and utilize and use the brains inside your company to get that power, because that is a power. If you become known as people that are putting out good content, informational content that's helpful, they're just going to follow you anyway, and slowly it will take time, but that thought leadership will turn into leads. All right.
Excellent. Right
Feels like,
on.
yeah, I was gonna say, it feels like we're good.
That's a good ending message. We're going to take a few minutes off to go again, stretch, get some water, do whatever we need to do. And we'll be back in a few minutes to take it home with talent management, which will be, I'm sure, a very lively conversation as well. So thank you, ladies, both for contributing.
yeah, thanks for having us.
I'm going to put you on the
so
spot
much.
and ask if we can also share your information for some
I
follow-ups.
was absolutely going to say, if anyone wants to reach out on LinkedIn, I'm sure Kamal feels the same way, would be happy to chat
Good.
about anything. So,
Excellent.
All right, thank you.
all right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right. We are now gonna take it home with talent management. Looking forward to this conversation. Okay. My pin. All right, Trang, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trang Julian, and I am a human capital executive. With a focus on talent management, which is really focused on talent acquisition. My specialty area is around technology in both the software as well as the product area. And so really excited to be here today.
Thank you for joining us. Tim, Dr. Schilbach, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Dr. Timothy Schilbach, again, Panacity LLC. I'm a small cybersecurity company here in Maryland, focusing on mostly governance, risk, and certifications for organizations. So thank you for having us.
Excellent. All right, so let's start out, Tim. How can a company, from your perspective, improve their workforce planning? We hear a lot about changing. We've talked a lot about right already how people need to know AI and everything else. Like, so how are you thinking about workforce planning?
So, well, that actually ties really nicely into the marketing, element from the last segment that we had out here. As your business grows and planning the staffing for the organization and even the acquisition of the proper talent to be able to get in working and effective for the organization is probably a very critical factor. A lot of people either just engage recruiters or have recruiters of their own that kind of handle some of these things. But we take a look at things a little bit differently here because if you're in the tech sector, there's a worker shortage mostly, right? So whether it's software engineers, developers, cybersecurity professionals, IT people, you name it. There's even a great shortage of marketing people and other things, right? Coming on going on out there. But really, the understanding what your needs are going to be and start to kind of look around at community level resources specifically. So Virginia, Maryland, and all over the United States, there's something called the Small Business Development Corporation, or the SBDC, that's sort of granted by the Small Business Administration. And one of the things that they do is they connect you to county level resources, because every county has got an economic development commission or corporation or something similar that's designed and funded specifically to work with chambers of commerce, in addition to collegiate institutions, state level institutions. And those are the places where you find grants and workforce development programs and all sorts of other things to take a look at. Also, I urge you to take a look at your local collegiate institutions, because those are really kind of like utilities. And a lot of people don't know this, but you could literally go down to like George Mason University if you're out near Fairfax, Virginia, right? And you can go down into the marketing departments down there, the School of the School of Business, and you can talk to the professors and get like professional level advice. There's even internships for grad students and undergrads that are always looking for a work opportunity that provides them with some work experience and some foresight into what they're going to be getting into in the workforce in exchange for mentorship and other things. Sometimes collegiate institutions also give constructive credit for these programs, and often it's a mandatory program that they have to go through. So if you're going through a graduate studies of an MBA or something similar, typically you have to get out and get so many community hours in as an intern, essentially, to get through some of these things. So throwing a lot at you there to kind of get around the way to start to talk about. And again, we're going to touch on this, I think, a little bit deeper as we go along in the segment. But engage with your SBDC, engage with your workforce development commissions, engage with your collegiate institutions, and take a look at the programs that they offer and the workforce development elements they do, and become a partner within your own community. And ergo, you'll be able to start to fill those gaps a little bit better when you start to need to intersect. Because when you need someone, it's not the time to go looking. You need to go looking and start creating those relationships long before you need talent and people to come in. Otherwise, if you're reactive, the acumen of the talent is going to be very reflective on your planning capability. So let me put it that way.
Great point. It's good to build those relationships now. All right, Trang, what would you say from your perspective?
Yeah, so before we start, workforce planning is part of talent management. And just to give everybody a little bit of a background, talent management is a process of how we attract, develop, retain, and deploy our employees. And so from a business planning perspective, talent is, I'm sure in our business, is the most important. It's the people that we should be looking at very strategic, just like finance and marketing annually. But talent management also really evolves, sort of periodically and more frequent and consistent attention throughout the year. So just to dive into workforce planning, it's a strategic process of how we analyze, forecast, and plan workforce supply. So I'm going to start at a very high level. I think first we need to do is, as you're looking at your business strategy, is what are your skills gaps? What are, we're talking about finance dashboards. We're talking about AI. We're talking about the different industry trends. What skill sets do we have? What skill sets do we need? And how do we determine what those gaps are? By mapping those existing workforce skills, then we need to then compare it to our future needs. The second part is conducting the data analysis. There's plenty of software now that really can assist with this data analysis, but just at a high level, as part of your data analysis is looking at your workforce, is who's up for retirement, where's your turnover, where's your future needs, is there some potential risk in skill shortages, or what does the labor market competition look like? When you sort of look at all of these analysis against of where your gaps are, it's going to help you to determine how you want to focus on identifying and acquiring those talents. Do we look at buying our talent? Do we look at building or borrowing our strategies? So at a high level, when we're talking about buying, this is how we hire external talent to meet skills gaps. We can decide if we're going to hire more interns, mid-level, more senior level folks. We can build. This more is about upskilling and reskilling your existing workforce. Obviously, this is going to help with your retention, because the more you invest in your existing workforce is going to give them that sense that you appreciate them and you want to invest in them. And of course, there's always the borrow. You can leverage temporary, like we had the fractional CFOs, you got the freelance, you got a partnership-based talent. Right now, we continue to have a big emphasis on the gig economy. So, there's a whole strategy that goes behind buy, build, and borrow. But the whole point of workforce planning is it's an important part of how you support, and complement your marketing as well as your financial goals. But it's focused on the people piece of it, which means you have to identify what you have, where you want to go, and what strategy of either buy, build, or borrow to get you there.
Excellent. Thank you for breaking that down. And I think your commentary about the gig economy, I think obviously COVID has changed the way we all work, the way we want to work. I think our lifestyles will just continue to make that piece of the economy thrive. So it'd be really interesting to think about how that fits into our just businesses moving forward. And to stick with you, second question, how can a company win the war for talent in a competitive job market, which we all are living in today?
Yes. I don't know. I feel like, since I've been in talent acquisition for the last 2 decades, there's always a war for talent. I think a lot of times companies think, well, it's a company market or it's a candidate market. And how I always look at it is top talent, it doesn't matter if it's a company market or a candidate market, we have to wow the top talent. As we enter in 2025, job candidates are looking for employers that have values, offer meaningful opportunity for growth, and creating a supportive and transparent work environment. So a couple of things that people are going to be looking for is company culture. They want to know is what is the company, what, is it inclusive culture? They emphasize well-being, open communication. They want to feel connected to the mission and values. As we start thinking about this is probably going to be the first time that all the different generations are going to be in the job market, with the baby boomers are still or some are they quite haven't retired. You got the Gen Zs are starting to enter. So in the next couple of years, the culture is going to help us not only have an inclusive of all the generations, but that mentoring of all the different generations as we all progress in our different cycles and levels within our careers. They're looking for flexibility. Now, keep in mind, flexibility is not always, working at home. Because I know there's a big trend of companies that are asking people to come back into the office 5 days a week or even hybrid. But I think it's more about remote work, customization schedules are important. They're talking about Gen Zs and millennials are the most important. They're looking for flexibility. Professional growth. We're talking about, professional development, including training, career advancement, career paths, and leadership are top priority. Company candidates are drawn to organizations that invest in their skills and future potential. The other part about it is they're looking for transparency and communication, especially from the leadership, but throughout the whole, from the top down. They're talking about open and honest communication with expectations, goals, performance. They're looking for transparency of compensation, benefits, and other career progression. Especially with talent in cybersecurity, it is definitely going to be a very hot skill set for foreseeable future. We could look at D&I. People want to work for a company that prioritize diversity and foster an inclusive environment to attract top talent. And of course, we got social responsibility. Company, they want to give back to the broader community, thinking about sustainability, ethical practices, and community engagement. And of course, they're looking at a candidate is always going to be looking at companies that have the best candidate experience, which means that the jobs are cleared and of the expectations. The interview process is really giving them time to understand your company, the position, their growth opportunities. We got to make sure that we get back in touch with those candidates. And we have to make sure that if we have other hiring managers, that the hiring managers are really engaging and being present during the interview process. So as you can see, the war for talent is not going to end. And these are just some of the components that a company can really pull as a lever to make sure that they're providing that competitive advantage to not only attract, but hire the top talent.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that overview. And I mean, even finishing it with the candidate experience, I think you're, thinking about it throughout that whole life cycle. Thank you. That was great. Tim, as you you work with your partners and as you are implementing some of these things and others, what are you really seeing as somebody out there fighting for this talent, fighting this war, if you will?
No, I think that's a great question. So I hear a lot of business owners. So I go to several CEO breakfasts every single month, and we all like to talk about our miseries, right? Out there, because everyone likes to commiserate. And I can't tell you how many times I hear it's impossible to find people in this job market, or I can't be competitive, or a bunch of other things, right? And so my first thought here is that, number one, you're not looking in the right places. Number two, you're not being competitive for your candidates, right? Mm-hmm. some of the things that like we talked about earlier, upskilling. We partner with a county level organization here called the Anne Arundel Workforce Development Center. They provide our organization in upwards of $20,000 per year, as long as there's a budget left in the county budget for the funding to upskill our existing employees. And we tend to use that to offer a series of training on a per employee basis. So that kind of rolls into what we would consider our benefits package, right? Another thing is sometimes I acquired the #1 person in the world for a specific engineering role. It was really funny because we had this need. We were hanging out on a public Slack server where this person is just solving every single problem. He's just a really top guy. He worked for PayPal. So obviously I'm not gonna be able to match out that salary or other things out there for that. But what we were able to do is reach out to that talent and exude what our culture was, provide a very interesting set of things to work on and latitude and creative freedom for him to come in and make those decisions on his own. And it was very easy to part him from PayPal, essentially. Again, he's the top guy at PayPal, running everything globally for PayPal on the specific tier that we were looking to get this talent in on. But he was bored out of his mind. The bureaucracy, the red tape, being a tiny cog in a massive organization, even at the level that he was competing at the potential most senior engineering level, he felt like he was not a valued member of the team. He's just constantly moving around because the senior management above him didn't even understand what it is that he did in the organization. So providing lack of guidance, providing the lack of creativity for him to run his efforts and team the way that he wanted to go do those things. And those are the building blocks that we have sort of proposed to this talent that, hey, we're awesome. We love to mentor. I want you to just go run with what you got. If we're doing things the wrong way, speak up, let us know. And I think that's really the superpower of all businesses at our scale and size, is your agility and your ability to have these small management structures to the point to where people are kind of left to their own devices, and the go-getters out there are going to really be happy with the fact that they can, #1, come in and do things in the manner they want to do it. #2, work on interesting work, because we only pick up very interesting work out there.
Sure.
We work on nuclear reactors and election systems. We work on boats in the ocean, spacecraft in the sky. We govern and we hack and we do all sorts of things for the government that are just really interesting and amazing that most big companies don't do. So again, that tracks the talent in here, is that we have interesting work. I've also met talent that are kind of at the end of their career and they're done with a rat race and they kind of want to downshift a bit before they fully retire. There's that. And we've also seen entry-level people who have been discouraged. I don't know if you've been following the news lately, but they're saying software engineering is dead with the new AI revolution and whatnot. And people are having a hard time securing positions, graduating out of top institutions, even like MIT. The top MIT graduates or Purdue or various other organizations in that industry. We're out there all too happy in the small business layer to give them their shot, right? So I think it's really important to, again, build that outreach in those programs with your collegiate institutions. We work with Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland, our 2-year institutions, never overlook those. You get some really great talent out of those community level colleges as well, kind of coming in. You could feel them out on internships. And again, our workforce development center will pay for, I think, 50 to 100 hours of internship, so that we could try before we kind of buy, kind of a thing, or they split the cost with us to help, do those things. So that's another great example of us partnering with our community level resources, going into the collegiate institutions and getting to know the students and being on a first name basis with a professor, serving as an advisor to those organizations to tell people what I want their skills to be by the time they graduate, so that they can start to intersect things that we need coming in, and that parity is there, right? So I think those are kind of bringing all those concepts together. That's at least what we're doing and how we're doing it, and hopefully that inspires others to maybe be more active in their community.
Absolutely. Great. No, those are great examples, especially for, organizations of any size to really leverage, right? there's a lot of opportunities to do fun things. And, we hear, especially I think at the Gen Z and millennials, lamented for a long time, there was not a lot of opportunity to actually have that freedom to like build things and break things and grow in their career. So I think that's a great thing to market. And there's so much to talk about in marketing, but one of the things we didn't talk about, of course, is using marketing to demonstrate your culture. To attract those folks. I think that's a big part of it. And we have several companies, I think many companies among our ranks who do that really well. So thanks for sharing that. And then, the last question we have, which we've touched on a little bit, but just, if we want to dive a little bit deeper into it, Tim, if you want to take this one home with us, and then we'll pass it off to Trank, is, what specifically are you seeing working when it comes to retaining and developing? Because we know, especially in this industry, if we're only looking at salaries, that is something that can sometimes be a challenge. So what are you seeing that's working specifically? Like what skills are people really wanting to get redeveloped or developed on and things like that?
No, those are great things to kind of look at, because it makes you also do some planning, right? So again, the mantra is fail to plan, plan to fail, right? So part of that is you as a leader in your organization and stakeholder, setting the tone, the culture, and also identifying, even in a small business of even a handful of people, what is the mobility of people coming into the organization? What is our strategy for them, right? So a great example was early on, we had some entry level positions, but we didn't have a lot of mid-tier to senior level positions because it's a pyramid, right? We need a lot of people at the bottom and we don't need as many people at the top, right? As we kind of get out there. But what we do is we actually work with, I think, 20-ish other recruiting firms. And so if you come in at our entry level, what we do is we use our upskill program to upskill you. I don't usually spend the upskill money on the top senior talent. They're typically not wanting to go get tons of new skills, but we had someone come in and was doing office management that wanted to get into cybersecurity. So they were doing office management. We upskilled them into cybersecurity. We then started having them sit with our security operations center or our assessing crew or our information technology people, and sort of they'd spend a little bit of time with everybody out there getting some mentorship, getting their hands on some things. I had a person come in as a recruiter, and recruiting is a feast or famine thing. It's a very low base pay, and then you got to really recruit a lot in order to be able to make up, that income element out there. And he's like, I like recruiting. I want to continue to recruit, but I also want to get into something that's going to, create a skill for me to where I could fall on that, because recruiting's like selling cars. It's like it's very exhausting. You're always hustling out there to get that paycheck in. So what we did is, at the time, we had a structured cabling division that did low voltage cabling, and we got him licensed as a low voltage electrician. And he went at night to do projects with our project teams and cabling of facilities and stuff like that. And then that person, we said, you know what, you've gone as far as you can with us. What you'd be really happy with is a bigger organization at this point. And so he went from making $35,000 to $45,000 per year to making $90,000 per year as an entry-level cable tech. And then he eventually went and is now running, entire teams and stuff like that, 3 years later out there. But what we did is we worked with our recruiting companies and our peer businesses that we have in the Cyber Association and other places that we know people in my LinkedIn network. I said, like, hey, I got this top talent guy. He's looking for a position. Reached out to people, got him an interview, got him a position. He doubled, tripled his money overnight, and then tripled it again over the next 2 years, which was great. But that's the thing, is that you got to care about your people enough to be able to say, I love you so much, I got to let you go, because there's just no other mobility here for you. And what I need to do is move you out and move someone else in. And the good part about that is, number one, we've had people leave our organization and then come back a year or two or 3 or 4 years later, actually. So it's kind of interesting. And they also stay in touch with us and call us and in contact with us. And we don't have to read on Glassdoor about how cruddy we are and our management peers and whatnot, because the people are disgruntled when they leave, right? So that's definitely something that where we try to create a really positive culture here, identify what your paths are, upskill you, move you to the next thing you're going to do in life, not just what it is that you're doing now. and then move someone else in behind that. And so as that person starts to, get that upskill, starts to get that movement, we now need to reach back to our recruiters and say, okay, I need a new person or talent that's going to fulfill this role. I want to interview X people at this date and this time, 30 days out, 60 days out, whatnot, so we can make our good decisions. And it gives us the ability to bring people in and try them out a bit. We can lean on Anne Arundel County to be able to do that transition internship as well if we want to reach out to a collegiate intern. Or we can go through SkillBridge for military interns and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different paths and stuff that we can do in order to be able to sort of attract that talent. But that's what keeps the people here, believe it or not. It's the abilities and cultures. And I actually have a hard time finding people to take the money to do the upskill. I end up begging people every year, take this money, do the upskill, get this certification, because people are just so busy doing what they like and what they love to do. And we've also got people that rarely take time off, and we have to go force people to take time off. We have to put on mandatory time off because they just are workaholics or like what they do. And so we have to also stress a good work-life balance. No one is allowed to work overtime without express permission from senior management. No one's allowed to work nights and weekends without express permission from senior management. That's just a control we had to put in place because people were working all hours of the day and night and getting burnt out early on. So
taking on all those fun problems.
Yeah, exactly right. So those are some of the things that we do and some of the techniques that we have in play. And again, this is where being competitive is more about not just your pay tier in your benefits package. It's also about your culture, how you take care of people, and sort of how an organization or person feels like they're being a contributor to our success overall. And we are, this is cliche as it is, a family at the end of the day. And I feel the same for all my people out here for that. So
that's awesome. No, thanks for that. And sometimes it's just knowing that, your company cares about you, and that might look like leaving, is a lot, leaves a really, I think, strong place in somebody's heart. And no, that's awesome. All right. How are you seeing this play out in your world, Trang?
So, I was sort of thinking, usually development / retention is also one of the first things that the companies generally cut, along with marketing. When funds are tight. And I think conversely, it should be the opposite, right? Because the cost of turnover or the quiet quitting of people just working but not feeling engaged is going to cost us more money than if we would make some type of investment in developing and retaining our employees. And not everything needs to cost money. I mean, some of it is just the cost or the latitude of supporting them and giving your employees that time and that support. So when we think about development, part of it could be continuous learning opportunities. When we're talking about upskilling and reskilling, it's training programs, obviously certification and workshops. But I think that will help keep the retention of your employees. Now they know your product, they know your culture, they know your service, but now they can have some other skill sets or some other soft skills that can be retained to help grow the company. On the job training, mentoring, shadowing, project-based learning, all of those do not cost money, but more time. A lot of things that I've seen is an executive will put together a task force and select, really high potential employees to work together to come up with a solution. It's a win-win. It gives them a little bit more visibility to the company. It helps them develop their skill sets, but then also gives them the opportunity to learn new skills. Of course, it's digital learning. We got LinkedIn Learning. I mean, I use that as a free platform. So just keep in mind that continuous learning opportunity does not have to cost money. Foster a culture of career development. We're talking about transparent career advancement framework. I really liked that Richard mentioned that, if you don't have anything, help them grow and learn, and I think that's a wonderful way to give them that support. I think the best leaders are not only growing to keep them, but to grow them to help them continue their career path outside of the company. You got individual development plans. I think it has to be done with the manager and the employee. I always share that the employees really own it, but the company and the hiring manager needs to support it. And I think a lot of times it's not just hardcore skills about cybersecurity or AI or machine learning. Sometimes it's communication, it's strategic thinking, it's career, it's cross-functional collaboration. And so keep in mind that sometimes skill set is not just hardcore skills, but it's also those emotional intelligence type of skill set that's really going to make a difference for the employee and how they contribute to the organization. And then, of course, we have internal mobility. I think a lot of times we spend so much time hiring them, but then we don't know how to help them grow. Keep in mind about internal mobility. There's a ladder and there is a lattice. So ladder is up, lattice is going back and forth. So you help someone to be a little bit more deeper, like moving somebody from sales into marketing. I heard that we can I've seen a lot of transition from a recruiter moving into some kind of inside sales roles. So there's a lot of opportunities to keep people from that standpoint, from internal mobility without always making them feel like it's got to be an upward mobility. We talk about employee engagement. Employee engagement is one of those things that if you're going to ask your employees about the feedback, the good, bad, and the ugly, then you got to at least recognize it and do something about it. And by having that opportunity to get those feedback, it could be an annual, it could be a pulse. It gives you an idea of how the state of the health of your employees, the leadership and the culture that trying to build, is that really being trickled down, and do the employees recognize what that culture is? Does that culture help them grow? Does it help them to bring in new talent? If you look on Glassdoor, they have these two components. One is the CEO's rating, and two, will you we refer someone to this company? Those two questions is really going to help define is if people are going to think that your company is an employer of choice. And of course, we already talked about inclusive work environment. We've already talked about the flexibility of a work-life balance. We talked about leveraging technology for talent management. This is going to help you to always sort of take a look at your workforce planning, but also how your talent's doing. Obviously, you can take a look at it from a workforce planning perspective. You could take a look at where are some of your potential turnover or risks, or address them proactively. You can take a look at who your high potential employees are. You can look at which one are your pivotal roles, that if somebody was to be to left, do you have a good succession planning? Especially if all of your work is supporting your clients in some capacity or another, you probably want to make sure that you understand where your talent, some of your key talent are, and if they are, or you're developing them or retaining them, and are they feeling as if they are committed and feeling like that you are going to really show them that appreciation. We talked about leadership as a soft skill, leadership development. Leadership development is not just at people that have people reporting to them. Everyone can be a leader within their own level, in their own space. So we're talking about, one is obviously equipping high potentials employees, and this is part of your succession planning, but then also giving everybody that opportunity to develop their leadership and communication skills. And all of this done with a strong employee brand. We had talked about during the attraction of candidate experience. Employer brand, which is also equates to employee value proposition or their voice, is really a critical of, if they were going to say, you talk about any company, how would people describe that company? What is the purpose-driven work of that company? What's their mission? What's their impact? How do they attract and retain those employees? And then the transparency of values and actions. This is really how the company decides to work together. This is how the company makes decision. This is how the company innovate together and overcomes challenges together. And of course, we talked about compensation and benefits. Of course, people come to work for obviously compensation and benefit, but they stay for the company, for their mission and their leadership and their growth opportunity. So when you talk about total rewards, if the company doesn't have more than a base, you talk about the benefits of the work remote, the work, the mission, the opportunity. Show to them that there's a total reward of some of the things that they can contribute from that's not always monetary. And of course, the last and definitely not the least is monitor and adapt. Is just like we did with the workforce planning. The job market, the culture, the economics is always going to be ongoing changes. And so be sure to have regular communications and surveys. It could be an all hands meeting. It could be skip level meetings. It could be annual surveys or pulse surveys. And so in closing is the whole thing about development and retention has to be consistent, but it has to be purposeful. And it has to be communicated so that your employees know that there is a plan, that their retention and development is important to the company. And by putting all these processes in place from a talent management perspective, is going to give you that discipline and that process to making sure that as you're developing your business strategies, that the human capital piece is aligned to it.
Excellent. Good. You both gave us a lot to think about. Any other questions, comments, thoughts, musings from the audience?
It's funny, I don't remember which one of you said this, but yesterday I happened to be in a meeting and somebody made the comment that they used to take it personally when someone resigned. And they actually would almost burn bridges as they were leaving. And they said they didn't realize it, but they finally turned the corner a number of years ago and said, you know what? I decided if I actually help them more in whether they're transitioning out or whatever the case may be, it's actually broadened my network and made it much better all the way around. And I heard one of you say, I don't remember what it was, but really supporting those folks as they're looking for new opportunities. If you can't keep them, that's fine. Don't hold it against them. You just don't have that capability, but help them be successful, because down the line, it may come back to benefit, probably will. It's going to come back and benefit you and them as well. And so I liked what you said. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and Bob, to kind of come off that a little bit as well. So what we try to do is we try to create that conversation, right? So we've got people that work here part-time and work somewhere else full-time, right? We've got people that work here full-time and somewhere else part-time because their skills in high demand, they're hustling, and that's what they like to do. They like to take on extra work and do extra things. We like to encourage people to do that. So that way that there's an honest and above board conversation. People come to us directly and say, hey, I'm going to pick up a weekend job or something like that, or hey, I'm building a pet project or doing other things, and not a big deal, right? So, number one, if you help fuel the passions of the people who you work with, you're not intimidated by the fact that you're so scared that this person is going to sap productivity out of your organization. Because if things are above board and you've created a good relationship, people ethically and morally will want to do the right thing, because your word is your bond and whatnot, right? So, but if you create a toxic or hostile work environment to where, like you're screaming at people, you're forcing people to be in an office that they don't really need to be in, because if you don't see them, they're not working, is your mentality. You're going to create a culture to where people are behind the scenes are going to be disgruntled, and they're going to start to do the, quote unquote, quiet quitting of doing the bare minimum or malicious compliance type elements out there. And they're going to be secretly looking for jobs and whatnot. Also, our people know that we have an army of recruiters always looking for new talent and whatnot. And so if they pop up on a job board, we're like, hey, what's going on? Right. So, those are the kind of things that, we want to make sure that we get out in the open and people can come and talk to us openly about that, and also openly about their exit strategy. Like, hey, I've been working here for like 2 years. I don't see us going any farther. Could you help me? Because that's what I want people to do. I want them to say, could you help me get to the next thing. And that's the
Mhm.
conversation that we have during the job interview, because one of the first questions I ask somebody in the job interview is, what do you want to be doing? I know you're interviewing for this job, but what is your ultimate goal? 5 year, 10 years down the road? What is it that you want to do? Is it this thing? Is this
Yep.
stepping stone? And this is not a trick question. This is not they're not committed enough for me to hire them and pull the rug out from under them, right? I want that vulnerability, all right, with someone that says, hey, I'm getting this help desk gig, or I'm getting this like entry level thing, but my passion is like this, and this. I'm like, well, how can we help you do that? How do you see us as an organization being able to help you do that? And a lot of the times they'll say your connections, your other things, because people look me up on LinkedIn just as much as I look them up. And when they come to the interview, I always say this is an interview for us as much as it is an interview for you. Please interview us, because we want you to want to work here, and we want you to feel that this is the right fit for you, because this is going to be a big choice and decision that you make to come into work in this organization. And we're going to put our all into it, and we want you to put your all into it. So that's how we kind of meet in the middle. But you got to be able to create that rapport. You got to be able to crack down on your middle management and to make sure that they're not exuding a toxic culture beneath you. Because that's the other thing too, is as your organization grows and you're hiring, you're no longer in arm's touch with everyone. By the time your organization gets to 50 to 80 people, you no longer on a first name basis. I got people that work here that I'd never even known worked here because they work in areas and things that I don't come into contact with anymore.
Right.
Because there's other management now that do that. Now, what I got to do is I got to go troop the line a bit and go down and try to figure out how do I engage with my people to where they feel they can come to me in an open door policy if there's issues with their management and conflict to be resolved. But also how do I impart into the management the key responsibilities that they have to take care of these people as if they're their own children or family members or brothers and sisters or mom and dads, right? I want them to give their subordinates the same effect, the respect that they're given as management staff, right? So culture is a big thing out there. I spent 30 years in the Army, and I will definitely tell you, I've worked in massively toxic cultures, and it inspired me to go become a leader and an officer because I was sick and tired of people get a little bit of power, go to their head, and they just create this massively toxic environment. And no one wanted to be there, and they wondered why everyone's leaving, right? So that's something that I can say I've served in that kind of a capacity as a subordinate, and that's not the organization I want to have, and that's not the legacy I want to leave in my company. So I mean, that's I think the most important thing is to make sure your culture is good.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the ironic piece is, yeah, there are a lot of folks that are elevated to leadership that have no business being in leadership because they've never been trained on leadership. So we do them a disservice in doing that wherever, whether it's in the military or another organization, and we do them a disservice. So yes, sir, I appreciate how you phrase that.
Well, Bob, leadership is about purpose, motivation, and direction, right? But also to become a leader, people have some raw innate talent and charisma to get out there and do that. But hey, maybe that skill up program could be used to skill up those management staff or people, or maybe I could work with my collegiate institutions to say, how do I make my culture better and how do I make my leaders better? Maryland and Virginia actually have had a program run out of the college, and they run it, I think, 2 times a year to where I can send my leadership there. And it's just a night course they can take a couple days a week for a couple of months is what it is. And they basically workshop leadership and a bunch of other things about how to successfully be a leader in your business and run the business, all completely subsidized by our state and government out here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Those are, that's over at the Tech Incubator over in, they run Cybertini, the International Center out of there. So many different.
Oh, BW Tech. Yeah.
BW Tech, yes. So they run so many awesome things out there in those programs. Another reason why you should be talking to your colleges, because they are terrible at marketing themselves and these awesome programs that they got. You could be out there and taking advantage of all these things and developing your leaders. All right. So go do that.
Awesome. Awesome. Good. Well, we're here, again, thank you guys so much for leading this conversation. We're really excited to share it with our beyond, the folks in this room as well, with our membership. And I think we definitely identified some themes that we can pull on, some threads we can pull on throughout the rest of the year. So we appreciate the foundation you gave us, and this goes for all the speakers. We so hope to see you in almost exactly a month, I guess 4 weeks from today, over at Ren's and Tyson. Just to continue this conversation and others. We dabbled, we can't help ourselves as a cyber association to dabble a little bit in privacy and data security and other things. So, when you come back in 4 weeks, I'm sure there'll be more conversations about that, as well as ways to grow our business. So,
or come out and check out our investor series that the Cyber Association is also doing. So if you're interested
Absolutely.
in finances and stuff like that, of acquisition and business and mergers and M&A stuff, Tasha can connect you guys to a whole troop of people that work in those M&A spaces that we've had through our other series coming in too.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
thanks for highlighting that. It's going to become, I think, a bigger and bigger topic. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about CMMC. So Tim will be back on your computer screens for those who are registered for that. Because
Thanks for putting this together, Tasha.
Yeah, of course. I think that, the continued conversation will continue. So we appreciate you. We'll share a list of folks who, have participated, so you can look them up on LinkedIn, and others. We won't share your emails, but we will share, some names. And we will share the emails of our speakers with their permission, to continue the conversation. And yeah, we appreciate you guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thanks, Ryan.
everyone.